mean, but I think we have to interrogate that. We really do have to interrogate that, move a little farther and that type of thing. But here, let me drive, and it is publicly available information. I'm not throwing Nigel under the bus. Amazing guy. I don't know if any of you know Nigel Travis. He's the CEO at Dunkin' Donuts. Very clever guy, very, very into analytics, very, very into analytics. And he also understands the power of using technology appropriately and the power of being blindsided by it. Because does anybody know which company basically Nigel was the CEO of before he went to Dunkin' Donuts? Blockbuster. Ooh, that's going to leave a mark. You know, so he understands this type of thing. But and they are. I know that many of you use it in large enterprises. The CEO does basically, like town hall meetings and things like that. The question you want to ask is, excuse me, sir or ma'am. Basically, when you wake up in the morning, tell me about how you start that cognitive engine. What do you think? What is that? What are those first 30 minutes of think about? And Nigel was great in this public environment. He says, I'm thinking about the competition. What are they doing to me? I'm thinking about revenues. I'm thinking about the changing landscape because it is changing. I don't know if one of the most interesting, IMHO, in my humble opinion, one of the most interesting places going on right now is there are coffee wars. McDonald's is into this, Starbucks is into this, Dunkin' Donuts is into this. It's amazing, and like it's very, very heated, and and they're bringing analytical firepower to bear. So it's a great case study to look at how this all shakes out. Franchisees are their customers. Franchisees are their customers. We're not really their customers. The franchisees are the user-chooser situation. Execution, what am I doing to improve improve our operations, and risk. So you get that going on. You got to know that type of thing. And then where they're going with this whole thing is this progression of economic value. How do I get more margin? How do I get more margin? How do I move up that market value chain type of thing? And I use the coffee example here is, because we're now in the experience type of thing that's going on. And then people say, well, that's coffee. Like this actually comes from an organization. It's called CNMOC, CNMOC. It is the Command for Naval Meteorology and Oceanography. All right, and what they're trying to do, their role is basically to grab all that information about the natural environment and create decision superiority on that. And they have marched up that because what they used to do was just look at the data, and then they sort of said this is what might happen, the predictive environment. Then they moved into how the predictive environment impacts operations. And then finally you move into, all right, what are the decisions? Let me make more robust your decisions. By the way, these slides will be made available to you, so you don't have to get carpal tunnel syndrome to write it all down. So that's good. But this happens in every vertical market, in government, in agencies, everywhere. This is going on. People are trying to move up. They're coming your way to make those decisions. So another exercise when you go back to your places of employment, basically, please, basically do this exercise is ask your people 3 ways you think the world 3 years from now is going to differ from the world we live in today. And let me how am I doing? I'm doing great. I'm doing great. All right. So anyway, we know that next will be different from now. Duh. Thank you, bow tie boy. That doesn't tell me anything. But here's the 40-year trend. There are these persistent, if you will, trends, and then they're the ones that that are of the moment. Is that things are accelerating. One of the reasons I'm a futurist is basically I used to be the research assistant for Al Toffler. Some of you know Al. Anybody know Al Toffler? I know this is a young group. Read this book, Future Shock. Read this book. He was the first to forecast acceleration in all things. And he said things were changing so fast, they were changing faster than humans could really deal with. So that's going on. And then Toffler told us that change has changed. So, but that's not the real thing. And the implication of that is that catching up, keeping up would become a major source of angst. We know that. That sort of defines our reality today. And this is Jeffrey Moore. I love Jeffrey. We hang out together. This is the diner in Woodside where all the billionaires hang out. But Jeffrey said, I said, my data shows me, Jeff, that basically every 5 years it's a reboot. It's a turnover. And he says, you're right, because every 5 years in the technology sector, things change enough to force me to write a book, a new book. So I call that convergent validity. So you got that going on. A few things. We know that change is accelerating. Duh, not the big thing. But here's the nuanced observation, if you will. The pace of change for the various piece parts of the world we live in is not uniform. And this is a point, this actually will impact your relationship with the other C-suite, if you will. Desynchronization, a macro trend everyone has to understand. The universe is not accelerating evenly. And the fact that the points of desynchronization are the high risk and the high opportunity areas for enterprises. And here is the biggest desynchronization. The disconnect between our ability to create, collect, and store data and our capability to thoroughly process and exploit it. That's you. That is you. So you go into that. I've been very fortunate as a futurist. I get to work with some of the geniuses at DARPA, and they have this lovely phrase called the pixel to pupil ratio. There's so much information. And we can't even, we cannot put analytical resources on top of it. So that's going on. Then Google, right? When in doubt, sadly, in today's environment, basically, when in doubt with the information you need, you typically go to some type of search engine or search utility. So I Googled basically the phrase "too much information." I got 202 million hits. It's kind of making my point, but I'm a thorough researcher. But so I went to Bing, and they got 388 million hits, right? But I think I'm making my point. I got Meta too much information. All right, we got way too much information. All right, that type of. And so here is, I draw the obvious conclusion that there will be an incomprehensible, mind-explodingly massive expansion in the amount of information floating around. What does that mean to you and your discipline and your relationship with the other C-suite? Well, this person here, I don't know whether you can see him, but Hal Varian, he was a colleague of mine. We taught together at UC Berkeley. He is now like the visiting chief economist at Google. But like the work he did with some of his brilliant students, he said like they looked out 15 years, and he said they came to the conclusion that because of Moore's law and all this other type of stuff, is like every molecule on this planet will be IP addressable in 15 years. I mentioned this at an Oracle sales conference, and they went bananas. They were so happy they had to smoke afterwards. The guy in the back screamed, "That's a license!" So they were very happy. So my apologies to Oracle. I mean, a former sponsor. But anyway, this is Mark Hurd, worked with Mark when he was at HP. In the next 4 years, there will be twice as much data as we have on the planet today. So the vendor community, the solutions community understand that, wow, this is an opportunity. But those of us in the practitioner side, we do not. And I want to change your thinking about this. Because the fact that there is all this information, I mean, just an amazing amount of information. Right? This is not a bug, ladies and gentlemen. This is a feature. So what does it mean that there's all this information? So you did from Symantec, you did a great job talking about, wow, there's data. We don't have to fight for the data. The data's there. In fact, we're fighting the data off us. Right? This is what this means. There is nothing we cannot know. There is nothing we cannot know. So you have to put there, this is what it means. All the data is there. What do you as an enterprise, what do you as an individual, what do you as a department, what do you choose to know? And we've got to become a little more aggressive about that. And then you go to some of the adults, you go to Mr. Ottolini. I was basically in the green room at the Charlie Rose show, and basically, and Mr. Ottolini actually is, because he works in an engineering culture, is very crisp in his statements, and they ran a little early, they were short, so the producers go, stretch it out, and so Charlie, off the cuff, he says, hey, what's going to be obsolete next? And without missing a beat, Mr. Ottolini said, ignorance. Ignorance is going obsolete. Ignorance is going obsolete, and you as web analysts, basically, you're the people who help us fight back that ignorance type of thing. So future leaders, I'm doing well, okay. Future leaders, have to do more than predict the future. They have to prepare for it. There's that type of thing going on here. And so in my classes at The Ohio State University, I said, all right, you got this big data coming at you. You got all this type of stuff going on. Who is a role model for this? Is Columbus a good role model for us moving forward in this where there's all this data? What I did right there is a pedagogical device that we use at UCLA. It's called a question. Is Columbus the guy? Should we be looking at him as a model? Probably. Good. You're reading the tea like, no. But no, I mean, there are similarities. Because when you're dealing with this new world, frequently your bosses don't get it. In fact, they're more confused than you are. Bosses are not always clear. So this is what Ferdinand and Isabella told Chris to do. They said, well, go out there, we're going to give you some boats, you're our captain, and you're going to go towards certain regions of the open sea to perform certain things for our service. Well, that drives the ambiguity out of it, right? Isn't that so like some of your mandates? Well, tell me good stuff, but do it quick and cheap, all right? What? What? So what was Columbus's mission? This is where you got to, what are they asking us to do? Because they didn't, that did not drive the ambiguity out of it, right? So what was it? What was his mission, and was he prepared for it? Well, actually, if you dissect it, you can read the tea leaves. He had 7 things he was supposed to do. All right, but what was the SLA for the project called Nina Pinta and Santa Maria? I mean, what really going on there? So drive that home. All right, but there were 7 things he was supposed to do. So he's got these guys, he's got these 3 boats, and he says, all right, so you're supposed to go out there, and because, Spain at the time was, a Catholic country, he says, you're supposed to go convert the heathens, right? You're going to meet all these strange people, and you're going to convert them to Catholicism. So did he have any priests on the boat? Not a one. Okay, all right, And then, all right, so now you're going to go out there, and now because you're going over the new lands, you're going to go, not only are you going to convert them, you're going to build these alliances with them. You're going to, we're going to, basically have these diplomatic relationships with them. Did he have any ambassadors on the boat? Not a one, And then, okay, well, and the people who didn't want to convert, and the people who didn't want to, deal with us and do the ambassadorial thing, then we're going to conquer them, sort of like our current. Anyway, but they say we're going to go conquer them. So how many men of arms did he have on the boat? Not a one. So it's kind of looking like an ERP implementation right about now, right? I mean, 0 for 3. 0 for 3. Not a one. Didn't have a thing, right? And then, although the royal order was to discover and acquire all the new lands, they were supposed to tell stories about it. It was sort of like the early Darwin thing, right? Did he have any naturalists on the boat, or somebody? Not a one. And then he was supposed to draw pictures. Did he have a drawer, illustrator? Not a one. 0 for 5. Very good. And then, although according to the Crown agreements, the voyage was to acquire precious stones and gold and silver, there was no one on that who was a jeweler, metallist, or a miner, right? So, was he ready? So, what was Columbus's plan? Just sail. What sail? And the reason I did, what is your plan? Just analyze. Just sail. Just analyze. So we might want to tighten that up a bit, right? Because they know that type of thing. Right? So that's going on. All right, so all my travel, don't worry, I'm about ready to return the podium to adult supervision. All right. All my travel, all my observing, all my data collection, all right, basically leads me to one inescapable conclusion. We are on the cusp of a new world. Ladies and gentlemen, very, very exciting new world. They're coming your way. You have the skills that are important for this new world. The medium of knowing has been transformed by web analytics. And so here, let me ask a question. Is web analytics under Caesared? Huh? What? Are we wearing togas? What, are we crossing some data Rubicon? No. And by I mean that you're all familiar with Caesar not because you read in Latin or something like that, or studied the classics, because you watch HBO. But anyway, you basically Caesar. The interesting thing about Caesar, the fascinating thing, a bigger than life individual, a hero of his age, as you are. But Caesar was basically what they did. Caesar came from a reasonably affluent, Roman family, and what they do is they groom their children to be successful in the world to come. And so one of the things they do is they send them out to do communications, which Tom Davenport talked about, and many of the speakers talked about the ability you need to communicate. But they send them to these schools in the Mediterranean, and they put them on the boat. They take them out there, sort of summer camp for oratory. But there was this cottage industry of people would basically hijack or pirate these boats, hold them for ransom. And so they captured Caesar and said, and nobody dies. It was all accepted. It was all very, very well behaved, type of thing. We're going to grab the guy and we're going to hold it. And so Caesar, understands this and he goes, okay, all right. So Caesar asks, so how much are you asking for me? How much are you asking? What's my ransom? And Caesar said, I insist that you double that. All right? Caesar did not, he had a whole lot of flaws. He had issues, right? But self-worth wasn't one. All right? Think about you as a web analyst. Would you basically say, excuse me, not only can you not cut my budget, you've got to take it up by 10. You see what I'm saying? That attitude. Do we have self-worth as what we do? And it starts with us, self-awareness. So you got that going on. Same question. So you got that going on. So you got to write your story. Who writes your narrative? And this is web analyst under Alexander. So you're all familiar with Alexander, right? So why? Most of you didn't study or major in history. Why are you familiar with Alexander? This is when somebody typically says in the back, because he was great. All right? Well, why was he great? Why did we know about him? Why was he great? And they go, the reason and he was great. He was an amazing, by the age of 32, basically, he basically conquered half the world, basically marched like 14,000, he marched 40,000 men, 14,000 miles, had a pretty good teacher, Aristotle. But the thing he did was he had historians documenting every accomplishment, every step of the way. Who is telling your value story, ladies and gentlemen? And that's not cheap. That's not that's not self-love. That is a necessity in today's world. All right, if you don't tell your value story, who's going to tell your value story? So there's that, and I'm just about done. But the question we ask is, did the people living in the Middle Ages know they were living in the Middle Ages? What? Well, think about that. Those of you who are historians, basically, all right, let's think about that, all right? So it's in the Middle Ages, all right? So that means 95% of us are peasants. So you wake up as a peasant, and you say, well, today sucks. You know, and if you have a memory as a peasant, you say, well, yesterday sucked, too. And then if you're a future-focused peasant, you say, you know, and if I live, I'm betting tomorrow's going to suck, too. Right? Because they had no concept of progress. No concept. That is a human concept. They had no concept of progress. And the tragedy is, prior to Jim Stern and the guys in E-Metrics, we as a discipline had no concept of progress. Today sucked. You know, sucks. Tomorrow, yesterday sucked, and I'm going on a limb here. I bet tomorrow's going to suck, too. All right? So let's not do that. We are actually at this point, this renaissance, British emphasis, where yes, there are risks, but there are real opportunities. And now, ladies and gentlemen, and so like, to the men and women in your organization, in the analytics organization, do they know that we are standing at a hinge of history, where you guys can command what's going on? And here it is, to sum it all up. I've said a lot of things, they're somewhat random. Let's pull it all together. This is my visual summation. What? 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 All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's a dog and a rocket. No, it's a visual metaphor. All right, I mean, ladies and gentlemen, that is not a dog, and that is not a rocket. That dog is your enterprise. All the complexities there, that's a lovely, your enterprise, all those business processes. And that rocket is all the data and the technologies and methodologies that, you know, is that type of thing. And the question I ask you is, when you light that rocket, are you going to have a happy puppy? And your job as a web analyst moving forward in the future is to save the dog. So good luck to you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.